Hi everyone, my name is Simranjit Kaur, and the article that I have chosen for my final assignment is The US China Trade War and the Comparative Advantage of Vietnam. Now let's have a look at how we'll be moving forward with this video. Firstly, we'll have a gist about the article that I have chosen for my final assignment. Secondly, we'll see the most important part, that is the literature review. Thirdly, how Vietnam got an advantage from this trade war, and then comparing Vietnam with other countries. Then we'll see the relation of this article to my course, that is International Business. Lastly, we'll conclude this article with some remarks. Let me first introduce the article. China has been losing international competitiveness in labor intensive industries due to various factors, including the trade war with the United States and globalization. The paper proposes to explore the future of labor intensive industries in Vietnam due to the US China trade war. The United States and China became one of each other's most important trading partner after China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. US goods exported to China have consistently become more remarkable than those imported from China. In order to remain competitive, American companies will have to cut costs if they cannot compete with cheap Chinese goods due to the trade imbalance is importing more than they're exporting to China, and this is a trade deficit. The US has a huge trade deficit with China totaling over $311 billion. Vietnam and China rely heavily on labor intensive industries to create and maintain jobs. On the contrary, when the US China trade war was in full swing, Vietnam, as a developing country, increased exports from the labor intensive industry. Let me now start with the main content of the article, which is also known as the literature review. Labor intensive industries exports grew at the fastest rate in the world, making China the fastest growing economy. China introduced its Made in China 2025 strategy in 2015 to upgrade technology. The China enjoys competitive advantage in areas with extraordinary industry capabilities due to the Belt Road Initiative, which is also known as BRI. The BRI sparked increased trade, investment, and infrastructure links between China and the associated countries. The US China trade war opened up market opportunities for other countries, especially Vietnam, because of its low labor cost and flexible production capacity. The trade war between the United States and China, many US companies are interested in Vietnam's potential as a trading partner. 61.54% of US firms are considering shifting operations from China to Vietnam. The United States has been the largest market for Vietnam's exports. On the other hand, China has been the largest source of imports from Vietnam. Now, let's move on to the advantages that Vietnam has gained through this trade war. The trade war has given Vietnam the most advantage of growing its economy. Because of the trade war between the United States and China, the Southeast Asian nation's economy has grown by almost 18%. Vietnam, however, has benefited most from the trade friction between the United States and China. It was also among the few winners early in the US China trade war. Its labor intensive industry exports depend heavily on the US market. Vietnam was the second biggest exporter of labor intensive products to the United States in 2017 after China. Now let's look at how Vietnam compares to other countries. The US China trade war resulted in a shift in the production of goods. China's labor intensive industry exports to the United States have almost matched the global export trend, except that the US China trade war led to its sharp decline in exports. For example, many companies such as Nike have moved out of China and have entered Vietnam and set up their business over there in order to find a better alternative. Now let's see how this article that I have chosen for my final assignment relates to my international business course. The article talks about how tariffs impact the involved countries. The paper also signifies the repercussions of the trade war between the two countries on the international trade, the impact of trade imbalances on the countries, as we can see in China and US, how a loss for one country can be a gain for another in the international market. For example, the gain that Vietnam is having as a competitive advantage, retaliation and trade barrier as a mean of intervention, as well as a competitive advantage to Vietnam. As we can see in the graph, the widening trade gap between the both countries. We also see that the export from China is decreasing, whereas the imports from China to the US have been increasing. So, in the conclusion, we see the article talks about how China's competitiveness was negatively affected, as well as Vietnam's competitive advantage increased. A changing demand for imports from the United States is a significant factor contributing to export fluctuations between the two countries. Since the United States has continued to fight anti China foreign policy, China's export to the United States have declined. In contrast, Vietnam's export to the United States has been increasing. In the ending remarks, I would like to say that China engaged in what we call the dumping activities, which is selling products below the cost production. I believe this is one of the reasons for the trade war. Now, this is the end of the presentation. These are all the references that I have used for my presentation. Thank you and have a very good day.